For them to spend their entire lives in prison, yeah, that is a
Yeah.
miscarriage. They have spent the better part of our lives in prison. So, whatever your perspective on the allegations themselves, they have paid a price. They're, you know, regardless, they have paid with the bulk of their lives. We all grew up in Princeton, New Jersey, right? They moved to California. The family moved to California when I was about 15. So
Okay.
they had lived in California for about 3 years. Lyle never really moved because he was 3 years older than us and he started at Princeton.
Yeah.
Right. So certainly he spent lots of time out there, but he was still in the area. They're all Cuban immigrants, right? So they all came together from Cuba during the revolution in 1960. And for some time, Jose lived with my parents. I think he came over. He was only 16 at the time. So he
Right.
did spend some. I was in my early 20s living my life. So, and I did for a short time when I was about 20, I did move to LA for a little less than a year, mostly so that I could visit them. But that was before the beginning of the trial. That was before the beginning. So by the time the trial started, I was already back on the East Coast. Um, and to be honest, during those days, I was really trying to avoid it as much as I could and trying to live a normal life. I have always spoken to the boys throughout all of these things. We talked about anything else, if that makes sense. In many ways, it took me a while, especially particularly as an adult, going through my life and doing things and going places. I would be hesitant almost to share that with my cousins. Particularly, I'm closer to Lyle. We speak more uh, because I would I it it hurt me, it hurt my heart
Of
to
course.
know that where they were, and here I'm living this fabulous life and I'm going to these places and I'm traveling and I didn't want to rub it in. And, he's always been like, no, I want to hear about that. There was some relief, right? Because the guilty verdict is the worst thing that you're preparing yourself for. And a hung jury is better than a guilty verdict. But it's still at the same time, it was like, oh no, we have to do this again. You're going to have to go through this whole rigmarole all over again.
Yeah.
And at
Yeah.
that point, it had become such a circus. It was such a circus. Both of my parents were very upset. It was all, I mean, it was horrifying. I know that my father, Jose, was his best friend. So it was very difficult for him. It was very difficult for him, not just that he was gone, but also then everything that was being said about him. That for many years there were hopes in forms of appeals, right? I think they lost their last appeal in 2009, something like that. Uh, and that's an emotional roller coaster in and of itself, right? In fact, with this latest habeas stuff and the efforts to maybe resentence, restructure the sentence, that's one of the things that Mark is looking at trying to get done. I have this emotional reflex
Uh-huh.
to not get hopeful uh, because it's been dashed so many times.
Yeah.
And for the first time, Lyle's like, no, I think you can be hopeful at this point. We'll see, but you can be hopeful. So we'll see. I think
Do you
I
think
had
you
long given up now. What people find most surprising when they do meet them is how funny they are and like just joyous people. You wouldn't expect somebody who's been in prison for 35 years to laugh a lot and to joke around a lot and to be so warm and, just very caring, and they are. It was certainly very emotionally difficult. I mean, there is uh, certainly having two members of your family murdered in such a horrible way. Certainly as, you know, not just two members of my family, my aunt, uncle, who I grew up with. We grew up in the same town. You know, these are people that were very close to me. And then it's another thing entirely to have two people in your family murdered and to have it absolute blanket of all media, every sitcom, there are jokes about it, every late night talk show. I mean, it was just inescapable. So I don't know that I don't know that anybody who has not been through that particular horror can really understand what that's like. They were denying that they did it, right? As I'm sure you know, right? For months and months, they were denying that they had anything to do with it, and we believed it. I mean, absolutely. There was never. I just simply couldn't imagine it. Um, it was so far out of character. You know, I we didn't believe it not because there aren't murders aren't committed every day. Certainly there are. Um, but Lyle and Erik were never violent people. You know, these aren't kids that were troubled or getting in trouble at school and so I mean that just wasn't the thing. It was completely crazy to us. It was just bonkers the idea that they could have done it. I have only watched the first episode of the show, which was outrageous. I mean, the the decisions of well, first of all, we spoke about this before the interview started. The playing a song at the funeral. I mean, come on. I appreciate poetic license, but that is beyond the pale. That was insane. The portrayal of Lyle as this rage fueled, fly off the handle, um, aggressive personality. I I was is so far off the mark of his
Okay.
personality. In fact, when I spoke to Lyle the other night, I said to him, you know, I don't actually think I've ever heard you raise your voice. And he was like, yeah, I don't do that. Like he really, that's not accurate.
Sure.
So I don't understand those choices. I don't understand. Um, I think maybe if the director and the actor had met him for 5 minutes, they would have seen how uh, contrary to his personality that actually is. But I can appreciate that they are making a show for ratings and for money, and that's maybe a better storytelling device.